Randy Marsh. Has a character in television history ever undergone transformation like Randy? Over the course of 23 seasons of South Park, Randy has gone from a simple father and geologist to an obsessive weed farmer who literally caused the pandemic. A truly wild evolution. But honestly, if you follow Randy's journey over these 23 seasons, the funny thing is that this development actually feels really natural and earned. He didn't just become an obsessive oaf one day, they slowly introduced certain quirks to Randy's personality, and those quirks evolved and developed over time. Randy went from being a moderately utilized secondary character to arguably the star of the entire show. And while there are some people who take exception to Randy's presence at the forefront of South Park these days, I think the journey itself is a fascinating one. So let's comb over 23 seasons worth of the man with absolutely no tegrity and explore the evolution of Randy Marsh.
Huh. I don't know. Maybe I'll drink a few more beers and see where the party takes me.
Randy's first appearance comes in the third episode of the series, Volcano, though it wasn't yet revealed that he's Stan's dad. He's introduced as the town geologist, who ultimately saves the town from an erupting volcano. All things considered, he's a pretty normal and competent dude in this first appearance. He alerts the mayor of the volcano eruption, finds a solution, and executes it, although he does burn down Denver in the process. While Randy is present in many episodes of South Park over the first 8 seasons or so, there are really only a handful of episodes that bring Randy to the forefront of the conflict, and often that is through his son Stan. That being said, they do start to set up some traits that end up defining Randy pretty substantially later on. In episode 212, Clubhouses, Randy and Sharon decide to get a divorce after fighting incessantly. This isn't really portrayed as anything overly dramatic, it's mostly played for laughs, exaggerating the types of things that happen when couples get divorced. We see Sharon immediately move on to a new man, while Randy gets a nice new convertible and starts partying, quickly taking to single life. While this was meant to parody the effects of divorce, this would be sort of a small hint at Randy's obsessive personality that would be showcased more later. In the end, the two of them of course get back together. In 302's Spontaneous Combustion, we start to see a sort of proto-Randy, a solid example of some of the things the show would start to do with Randy later on, though it's still not a huge focus. When citizens of South Park start to spontaneously combust, Randy is tasked with finding out why as the town's only scientist. The sequences where Randy is doing research are pretty classic, just showing him mixing random chemicals in the basement while he brainstorms. But funny enough, Randy does figure out what's causing the spontaneous combustion: people holding in their farts. He then literally wins a Nobel Prize for this discovery and solution, which he is then stripped of when the farting solution causes more problems than it solves. On paper, pretty classic Randy. In execution, relatively subdued compared to what we've gotten used to. 308's Two Guys Naked in a Hot Tub is a really funny episode, but honestly, it starts to explore Randy's fears and regrets in ways the show hadn't yet. Randy actually laments the lack of freedom that comes with his life as a family man. I'll touch more on this aspect of Randy's fears later, because for now, it's mostly used as an entry point for Randy to, pleasure himself in front of Gerald, and then get really insecure that somebody is going to find out. 408's Something You Can Do With Your Finger feels like a really good early example of some of Randy's weirder quirks and interests being revealed. Randy is absolutely furious that Stan is in a boy band, and his attitude towards the whole thing is very funny. It's as though they were starting to feel out a lot of the fun traits they would roll with later on in the show. We learn that when Randy was 18 years old, he too was in a boy band, Ghetto Avenue Boys, and he was wildly successful for a year of his life. Unfortunately, the music industry spit him out as quickly as it ate him up. This was when the show started to paint a picture of a sad, regretful father who was afraid that his best days were behind him. These aren't the only episodes in early South Park that feature Randy heavily, but they are the ones that sort of individualize him. He still does plenty of other weird, quirky stuff throughout this era of South Park, but honestly, for a huge chunk of other episodes, it's the entire town that goes along with these weird, quirky situations. Randy is often just a part of a bigger mob that's partaking in these strange events. Outrage about Shinpokomon's effect on the kids? There's Randy. Civil War reenactment? Randy. Becoming zombified by Ritalin? Randy's there too. He sort of leads the charge in leaving the church and becoming atheists, and also shitting out of his mouth. The town embracing the metrosexual lifestyle? You know Randy will be there. He's at the forefront of the pro/anti-war conflict in I'm a Little Bit Country. He becomes obsessed with Walmart when the town builds one. He convinces the whole town to double down when they try to win South Park back from the casino. There are honestly countless examples of Randy going along for the ride with the other citizens of South Park. A major aspect of the show has always been the town of South Park itself getting really caught up in ridiculous conflicts, and usually when Randy was a part of them, he was sort of our window into the townspeople. He wasn't necessarily a standout. Like in the episode A Little Bit Country, yes, he is the one at the forefront of the anti-war protests, but he's mostly just representing that half of the town. There's nothing inherently Randy about his actions in this episode. He's just our access point into this side of the conflict. Though episodes like My Future Self and Me do start to show off some of Randy's quirks through some of these town-wide situations, and some episodes maybe put a tad more focus on Randy, even though it's a town-wide conflict, like when the Walmart moves into town. But overall, these early seasons of South Park primarily showcase Randy as a slightly more prominent South Park citizen, and not nearly as much as an individual. But in Season 9, one episode would change that forever.
I'm not allowed to stand up for myself? I thought this was America. Huh? Isn't this America?
Episode 905, The Losing Edge, is, in my opinion, a perfect episode of South Park. I could go on for days about how well it balances a hilariously clever and subversive conflict for the kids with a gut-busting Randy-focused subplot, but for this video, let's talk about how this episode completely shaped the future of Randy Marsh. In this episode, Randy becomes obsessed with getting drunk and fighting other dads at Stan's baseball games. In fact, it totally becomes its own sport for him. The pride that Randy feels for beating up these other dads is immeasurable. It's possibly the thing he is most proud of accomplishing in his entire life. I think this is actually a really natural evolution of what we've learned about Randy. Those fears that he talked about in the hot tub, his insecurities about life passing him by, this is seemingly the first instance of Randy embracing something new that is just for him, something he is invested in that is completely his own, and an accomplishment no less. This also marks another important occasion, one of the first times that Sharon starts to get super fed up with Randy's bullshit. Oh yeah, and on top of all of this, the episode showcased that Randy is absolutely fucking hilarious. Look, Randy was funny before this, but by showcasing him in these elevated, drunken, ridiculous states, they were able to convey a performance for Randy that they hadn't before, and I think it unlocked something special for the show, something that maybe they didn't realize they had until now. Randy is comedy gold, and from here on out, Randy became a much more prominent character in South Park. He was still used very often as our townspeople surrogate, so when the town was going through some weird fad or obsession, we would often see that through Randy. Episodes like You Have Zero Friends saw him get really caught up in the Facebook fad. He had a hilarious role in Night of the Living Homeless. He's at the forefront of the celebrations when Obama becomes president. He basically leads the town in their weird worshipping of the economy, and he took the nationwide queefing conflict to Congress. They also start to give Randy significant subplots in kid-centric stories. One of the most memorable is obviously Make Love Not Warcraft. The focus of this episode is the kids' struggle to play World of Warcraft, but they give a substantial subplot to Randy trying to play the game as well, and this riffs pretty well on those insecurities that we've been seeing slowly surface for Randy as the show goes on. He becomes more and more obsessive over seemingly trivial things, and oftentimes things that are seemingly loved by younger generations. Randy is initially confused by World of Warcraft, but quickly gives it a try for himself. He even saves the day before being killed in front of Stan. Or even episodes like Fantastic Easter Special, where we find out that Randy is a part of the Hair Club for Men, a secret society that keeps the secret of Easter. This idea is hilariously Randy, but it also is mostly just the inciting incident for Stan's big Easter adventure. They also start to utilize him in a more foundational supporting role, rather than just as a part of the town. However, the biggest change after The Losing Edge was that we started to get episodes that were basically 100% Randy episodes, and we would usually get at least a couple a season. Even the end of Season 9 throws Randy to the forefront of the show again in Bloody Mary, when Randy gets pulled over for drunk driving. This episode actually deals with Randy's addictive personality, but it also does so in the most Randy way possible. When an AA meeting tells Randy that his alcoholism is a disease, Randy takes this, well, about as far as you'd expect Randy to take it. After this, we see so many Randy-centric episodes that continue to elevate the Randyisms to a ridiculous degree. Season 11's Apologies to Jesse Jackson shows Randy, well, we all know what Randy does in this episode. Just ludicrous stupidity, and his response to the controversy is equally ludicrous. Season 13's Pinewood Derby is one of my personal favorite episodes and is basically just a Randy highlight factory. Randy is so desperate for Stan to win the Pinewood Derby that he steals a superconducting magnet from the Large Hadron Collider. Because of this, the car literally breaks warp speed, leading to first contact. But because of Randy's complete incompetence, he basically leads the human race down the exact wrong path. In the end, it turns out that the aliens were testing the human race to see if they were worthy of being a part of their intergalactic federation, and Randy's leadership gave them their answer, a resounding no. And to be fair, the entire planet goes along with Randy's awful plan, so it's not all on him, but he did lead the way. In fact, Randy is shown to lead a lot of weird fads. Season 14's medicinal fried chicken is a particularly egregious example of this. When a medical marijuana dispensary opens up in South Park, Randy literally gives himself cancer so that he can get high all of the time. In fact, I'm not sure I can even show these clips. I guess I'll blur it. But Randy also ends up convincing all of his friends in town to do the same thing. It's hilarious and another example of the lengths that Randy would go to feed his addictive personality. But the show also goes to great lengths to explore the depths of Randy's insecurities. In the episode More Crap, Randy breaks the world record for largest dump ever taken. He instantly gets competitive about it and is so depressed when his record is beaten by Bono. This might be one of the most ridiculous episode premises in South Park history, but you cannot deny that it truly explores Randy on a substantial and meaningful level. The longer the show continues, the more they explore Randy's regrets and his desires to leave some sort of lasting impact on the world, to have some sort of major success that gives his life the meaning he craves. This idea is also further explored in Season 14's Creme Fraiche, where Randy becomes completely obsessed with the Food Network and becoming a celebrity chef. He even starts working at the school cafeteria, which frankly makes me miss Chef. This episode ultimately gives an alternative explanation for Randy's Food Network obsession, but this again illustrates Randy's desire to be something more than what he already is. And this actually comes to a head in an incredible Season 15 episode, You're Getting Old. This episode is genius, and Randy's story is very much secondary to Stan's, but it also says a lot about the state of South Park. I actually did an entirely separate video about this episode and its place in South Park history if that interests you. This episode is specifically about Randy's refusal to admit that life is passing him by. The kids are all into a new music genre called tween wave, which pointedly sounds like literal shit to Randy and to other adults. But Randy will not admit that he isn't hip to the new trends. He falsely claims that he actually loves the music, even though it's abundantly clear that it sounds like shit to him. In fact, he even tries to start performing his own tween wave music, thinking that this might be his chance to actually make it big as a musician. And the results are, well, Randy farting into a microphone on stage. This is not only hilarious, but it lines up so well with what we know about Randy and his history. Randy was in a boy band at age 18 and tasted success, but that success was short-lived. We learned in Guitar Queero that Randy played guitar and had dreams of being a rock star that never panned out, and through so many of these episodes that we've talked about, Randy has desperately tried to capture some sort of new success in his life. He's felt that family life has actively prevented him from doing something meaningful, but Randy's antics finally catch up to him in his relationship with Sharon, who is finally completely fed up with this behavior. And she cites all of the same things that we've been talking about as the biggest issues with Randy's life. They argue until they get to the root of the issue, that Randy is not happy doing the same old shit over and over. Now I think this is definitely metatextual and has a lot to do with how Matt and Trey were feeling about the show itself at the time, which again I have made a video about, but this also says a ton about Randy as a character. After all, in a lot of ways, Randy is a reflection of Matt and Trey themselves. The reason that Randy continues to become more bombastic and obsessive and journey down these ridiculous story paths is because he isn't happy with his life, something that has been really well established over the course of the show. This episode actually ends with Sharon and Randy getting divorced, and honestly, the montage set to Fleetwood Mac's Landslide is really emotionally affecting. And while this episode and its follow-up do sort of suggest the idea that the show and its characters do need a change and shouldn't return to the previous formula, they sort of throw that idea away for a quick joke. It seems like they're going to continue with this story until Randy abruptly reveals that he and Sharon are getting back together, which is a very funny moment, admittedly, but even though it seemed like they were going to return back to the status quo, over the following 8 seasons, the show really started to see some major changes. For a few seasons, Randy continues his ridiculous plans as expected. In Broadway Brodown, he becomes obsessed with Broadway musicals, even venturing to write one for himself, perhaps a little autobiographical for Matt and Trey. In Season 16, Randy creates a football replacement sport called Sarcastaball, and even becomes the head coach of the Denver Broncos. He also buys a block Blockbuster Video in the year 2012, thinking that it's his ticket to finally being successful. This turns into a full-blown Shining parody, and Randy nearly kills his family, but it's also just another example of how desperate Randy is to find a new success. In season 17, Randy becomes a mall security guard for Black Friday, initially just planning on using the position for a better spot in line for Black Friday deals, but eventually becoming fully invested in the massive war that is holiday shopping. But in season 18, the show started to try something new, serialization, at least in small doses. This wasn't a fully serialized season, but there were aspects of each episode that continued to cross over through the entire thing, and for Randy in season 18, there was one aspect that played out all season long. Randy was moonlighting as music sensation Lord, all while still working as a geologist. This is definitely Randy's biggest accomplishment, though it seems that it maybe didn't bring him all that much joy, since he was sort of pretending to be someone else. In fact, in the middle of this season, he even takes a little break to pursue cock magic, apparently something that he used to do in college. This is another of my favorite episodes. I definitely suggest watching it if you haven't seen it. But it appears that Randy's career as Lord was short-lived, because in season 19, he's onto all kinds of new ventures. He joins a PC frat, he spearheads the attempts to gentrify parts of South Park so that they can get a Whole Foods. Interestingly, this was actually a pretty Randy light season, and both seasons 20 and 21 are similar. For the first truly and fully serialized season, Randy's through line has a lot to do with his addiction to member berries, basically nostalgia fruit. It ultimately culminates in Randy being sort of zombified and possessed, but this lines up pretty effectively with the addictive tendencies we've seen over and over in the show. Season 21 has a couple Randy-focused episodes. He becomes obsessed with renovating houses for his HGTV series White People Renovating Houses, and then becomes really fixated on canceling Columbus Day. Pretty standard Randy action, hyperfixations coupled with ridiculous stupidity. It kind of seems like the show was just running through the motions with Randy after his stint as Lord, giving him a few episodes a year and having fun with them, but everything would change in season 22.
So I loaded up the kids, took my wife by the arm.
In season 22, Randy gets fed up with his life and the people of South Park, and he moves his family to the valley to become weed farmers. Some people take issue with this development, but it actually makes plenty of sense given what we know about Randy. We know he's been unhappy with his life and is constantly trying to fill that void with new careers and experiences. I mean, he's been a geologist, boy band member, Walmart employee, cafeteria chef, Broadway musical writer, coach of the Denver Broncos, mall security guard, owner of Blockbuster Video, music sensation Lord, cock magician, host of White People Renovating Houses, and now, finally, a weed farmer. But this is also something that speaks to his addictive personality. I mean, he's been addicted to gambling, alcohol, heroin hero, weed, internet porn, member berries, crack, and weed again. Season 22 has a lot of fun with Tegridy Farms for this one episode, and then it sort of acts as a minor subplot / throughline for the remainder of the season. Events take place there, like Man Bear Pig mauling Ned, but there isn't much of a focus on it story-wise until the season finale, Bike Parade. But this season finale, I think, is really important for Randy's development moving forward. Because of the Amazon strike, Randy starts getting a huge amount of traffic through Tegridy Farms, probably the most success he's ever seen in his life, save for Lord, but we won't count that. And pretty quickly, this goes to Randy's head. He does end up helping the town take down Jeff Bezos by getting everyone stoned enough not to care about the Amazon strike. But chasing down the success leads directly into season 23, which is a different show entirely. And I mean that literally. The South Park theme song is nowhere to be found, completely replaced by the new Tegridy Farms title sequence. Randy Marsh was now fully and officially the star of South Park. The first 6 episodes of the season are literally episodes of Tegridy Farms, and Randy is a main character throughout. But the through line for these episodes is how through selling weed with quote-unquote tegrity, Randy starts to chase success and in the process completely loses all tegrity. In the first episode of Tegridy Farms, Randy literally bombs the home grow ops of South Park because they're taking away his business. In the second episode, he makes a deal with communist China, who uses his weed to plant on protesters. He starts selling plant-based burgers using his leftover product, claiming it it is for the environment, but then proceeds to murder an entire herd of cattle because he doesn't know what to do with them. Tegridy Farms is about a man who has achieved success beyond his wildest dreams and completely loses sight of what is right and wrong in the process. The show focuses on Randy for the first 6 episodes of the season before airing the Tegridy Farms season finale, but then in the actual season finale, they all run back to Randy and ask for help to get the town in the Christmas spirit, and his solution: to sell everyone weed that is caked in cocaine without telling them. That's Tegridy. In the pandemic special, we see Randy showcasing probably the least Tegridy he's ever displayed, revealing that when in China, he actually created the coronavirus. I will not show you how he created the coronavirus. The entire special, he tries to fix the problem, but not because he feels remorse, it's simply because he doesn't want to get caught. No Tegridy at all. The funniest thing about Randy and Tegridy Farms is how he's sort of being used to convey meta commentary to the audience from Matt and Trey. The general audience response to Tegridy Farms from the fan base has been, go back to South Park. So they've essentially chosen to mock the fans in funny ways through metatextual dialogue. Even after the vaccination special, which in so many ways reset the show back to the status quo, they still made it clear that Randy wasn't done with Tegridy Farms. He's barely in the special at all, but they throw him in at the end just to say, ha, we're not done yet. And honestly, I am pro Tegridy Farms. I know it's not everyone's favorite, but I'd rather the creators of the show have fun and find creative inspiration than try to force the show to be what it used to be. I don't want a soulless imitation of South Park's classic seasons. I want inspired stories that they're excited to tell. Seasons 25 and 26 have taken focus away from Tegridy Farms a little bit, but it is in no way gone. So for now, Randy Marsh is the owner and operator of Tegridy Farms, and he's had a wild journey getting there. He started as a pretty simple father and geologist. We were slowly introduced to some funny quirks and obsessions, which then evolved into wild hyperfixations and career changes in the midst of a midlife crisis. And finally, he settled into a weed farmer with absolutely no Tegridy. If we look at Randy in his first appearance and his last appearance, you wouldn't be able to tell it's the same character, but when you watch the series beginning to end, it couldn't have happened any other way.